Hello everyone, this is Van Alumar Sinakwa, together with my co-reporter Miss Jurian Lapas and Miss Gianlu Alisna. In today's report, we're going to tackle about the evolution of the Philippine Constitution. But before we proceed, let me share with you our objectives. First, define what is Constitution and its importance. Second, to analyze and understand the Philippine Constitution chronologically. Third, to be able to examine the reasons and aims of the changes in the Constitution. And last, to be able to give insights about the evolution of the Philippines Constitution.
To fully understand how the Philippine Constitution evolved, let's start with a definition of the Constitution. What is a Constitution? Constitution is a set of rules that guides how a country, state, or other political organization works. So, this is like a rule book for the government. And all rules stated in this rule book must be followed by the government. This document also creates the branches, the powers, and the responsibilities of the government, and it is also contain the rights of the people. And it is illegal for the government to violate these rights. If they do, they will be punished by the law. The Constitution is also often known as the supreme law of the land. This means that it is the highest law in the country. The government cannot pass a law which goes against the Constitution. All laws must comply with the principles set out in a Constitution. Take note of this. No one, not even the President, can go against the Constitution. Here is a fun fact. Did you know that every February 2 is our Constitution Day? For those of you who are not aware of this, for every change in the Constitution, the President will release a proclamation to commemorate the date when the new charter will take effect, and this day will called the Constitution Day. The latest Constitution of the Philippines was ratified on February 2, 1987. This is the reason why we celebrate our Constitution Day every second day of February. Now that we already knew the meaning of the Constitution, let's move on to the importance of Constitution. The importance of Constitution. First, it maintains law and order. Imagine a country without a constitution. It will be in chaos. We, Filipinos, will be denied of our rights. Second, it imposes rules and regulations. The Constitution serves as a guide to the government official in managing the government. It tells them the things they should do and should not do. Third, it protects individuals' freedom and rights. Fourth, it limits the power of the government. Without a constitution, many officials will take an advantage, and the government will function to its will. So, it is a must for us to have a constitution. So, let's move on to the evolution of the Philippine Constitution. What you are seeing right now is the timeline of all the constitution in our Philippine history. We have the total of 6 constitution, starting to the Malolos Constitution down to the 1987 present constitution.
Good day everyone, this is Jorian Lapas as one of the reporters about the evolution of the Philippine Constitution. Let us first discuss the 1899 Malolos Constitution. As we remember from the previous report, after the signing of the truce, the Filipino revolutionary leaders accepted a payment from Spain and went to exile in Hong Kong. So upon the defeat of the Spanish to the Americans in the Battle of Manila Bay on May 1, 1898, the United States Navy transported Aguinaldo back here in the Philippines. The newly reformed Philippine Revolutionary Forces is reverted to the control of Aguinaldo, and the Philippine Declaration of Independence was issued on June 12, 1898, and together with it is the several decrees that formed the First Philippine Republic. On January 23, 1899, the First Philippine Republic was inaugurated at Baraswain Church, Malolos, Bulacan. The Malolos Congress was convened on September 15, 1898, which was composed of wealthy and educated men. So the document that they came up was approved by the Congress on November 29, 1898, and was promulgated by Aguinaldo on January 21, 1899, and was titled The Political Constitution of 1899 and was written in Spanish. The Constitution has 39 articles divided into 14 titles, with 8 articles of transitory provisions and a final additional article. The document was patterned after the Spanish Constitution of 1812, with the influences from the charters of Belgium, Mexico, Brazil, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Guatemala, and the French Constitution of 1793. There are also prior constitutional projects in the Philippines that influenced the Malolos Constitution, and to name them, we have the Cartilla and the Sangguniang Hukuman, the Charter of Laws and Morals of Katipunan written by Emilio Jacinto in 1896, the Biak na Bato Constitution of 1897 planned by Isabelo Artacho, Mabini's Constitutional Program of the Philippine Republic of 1898, the Provincial Constitution of Mariano Ponce in 1898 that followed the Spanish Constitution, and the Autonomy Projects of Paterno in 1898. There are also important constitutional provisions present in the document. We have first, the 27 Articles of Title IV detail the natural rights and popular sovereignty of Filipinos, the enumeration of which does not imply the prohibition of any other rights not expressly stated. Title III, Article 5 also declares that the state recognizes the freedom and equality of all beliefs, as well as the separation of church and state. So this article was a direct reaction to the features of the Spanish government in the Philippines, where the friars were dominant agents of the state. The form of government according to the Title II, Article 4 is to be popular, means it is for the people. It is representative, alternative, and responsible, and shall exercise 3 distinct powers, which are the legislative, executive, and judicial. The legislative power was vested in a unicameral body called the Assembly of Representatives, members of which are elected for terms of 4 years. The secretaries of the government were given seats in the Assembly, which meet annually for a period of at least 3 months. The bills could be introduced either by the President or by a member of Assembly. Some powers not legislative in nature were also given to the body, such as the right of impeaching the President, Cabinet members, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and the Solicitor General. A permanent commission of 7, elected by the Assembly and granted specific powers by the Constitution, was to sit during the intervals between sessions of the Assembly. The executive power was vested in the President and elected by a constituent assembly of the Assembly of Representatives and Special Representatives. So before, the President was elected by a constituent assembly, unlike now that we have a national election. So the president will serve a term of 4 years without re-election. So the document was written by Felipe Calderon A. Roca and Felipe Buencamino. The preamble of Malolo's Constitution. We, the representatives of the Filipino people, lawfully convened in order to establish justice, provide for common defense, promote the general welfare, and ensure the benefits of liberty, imploring the aid of the sovereign legislator of the universe for the attainment of these ends, have voted, decreed, and sanctioned the following political constitution. Let us go now to the 1935 Commonwealth Constitution. After the Treaty of Paris, the Philippines was subject to the power of the United States of America, effectively as the new colonizers of the country. From 1898 to 1901, the Philippines would be placed under a military government until a civil government would be put into place. It also provided for a presidential system of government with a unicameral legislature. It had the power to enact laws for the Philippines known as Commonwealth Acts through the National Assembly. 2 acts of the United States Congress were passed that may be considered to have the qualities of constitutionality. First, we have the Philippine Organic Act of 1902, and second, we have the Philippine Autonomy Act of 1916 or Jones Law. To better understand, let us discuss the 2 acts mentioned. So first, we have the Philippine Organic Act of 1902. It was the first organic law of the Philippine Islands that provided for a creation of a popularly elected Philippine Assembly. The act specified that legislative power would be vested in a bicameral legislature composed of the Philippine Commission as the upper house and the Philippine Assembly as the lower house. The key provisions of the act included a Bill of Rights for Filipinos and the appointment of 2 non-voting Filipino resident commissioners of the Philippines as representative to the United States House of Representatives. So the second act was the Philippine Autonomy Act of 1916, commonly referred to as Jones Law, which modified the structure of the Philippine government through the removal of the Philippine Commission, replacing it with a Senate that served as the upper house and its members elected by the Filipino voters, and it was the first truly elected national legislature. It was also this act that explicitly declared the purpose of the United States to end their sovereignty over the Philippines and recognize Philippine independence as soon as a stable government can be established. In 1932, with the efforts of the Filipino Independence Mission led by Sergio Osmeña and Manuel Rojas, the United States Congress passed the Hair Hose Cutting Act with the promise of granting Filipinos independence. The bill was opposed by then Senate President Manuel L. Quezon and consequently rejected by the Philippine Senate. By 1934, another law, the Tidings-McDuffie Act, also known as the Philippine Independence Act, was passed by the United States Congress that provided authority and defined mechanism for the establishment of a formal constitution by a constitutional convention. The members of the convention were elected and held their first meeting on July 30, 1934, with Claro M. Recto unanimously elected as president. The Constitution was crafted to meet the approval of the United States government and to ensure that the United States would live up to its promise to grant independence to the Philippines. The Constitution created the Commonwealth of the Philippines, an administrative body that governed the Philippines from 1935 to 1946. It is also a transitional administration to prepare the country toward its full achievement of independence. It was originally provided for a unicameral National Assembly with a president and vice president elected to a 6-year term without a re-election. and it was amended in 1940 to have a bicameral Congress composed of a Senate and a House of Representatives, as well as the creation of an independent electoral commission, and limited the term of office of the President and Vice President to 4 years with one re-election. Rights to suffrage were originally afforded to male citizens of the Philippines who are 21 years of age or over and are able to read and write. This was later on extended to women within 2 years after the adoption of the Constitution. While the dominant influence in the Constitution was American, it also bears traces of the Malolos Constitution, the German, Spanish, and Mexican constitutions, constitutions of several South American countries, and the unwritten English Constitution. So the draft of the Constitution was approved by the Constitutional Convention on February 8, 1935 and ratified by then U.S. President Franklin B. Roosevelt on March 25, 1935. The elections were held in September 1935 and Manuel L. Quezon was elected President of the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth was briefly interrupted by the events of the World War II, with the Japanese occupying the Philippines. So afterward, upon the liberation, the Philippines was declared an independent republic on July 4, 1946. The 1935 Commonwealth Constitution Preamble. The Filipino people, imploring the aid of divine providence in order to establish a government that shall embody their ideals, conserve and develop the patrimony of the nation, promote the general welfare, and secure to themselves and their posterity the blessings of independence under a regime of justice, liberty, and democracy, do ordain and promulgate this Constitution.
The next reporter will be Ms. Jianlu Alasna.
I will tackle about the 1943 Constitution or Japanese government. The Second Philippine Republic was established during the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. At the outset of the occupation, the Japanese government established a military administration over the Philippines, as well as the Philippines Executive Commission composed of several pre-war Filipino political leaders. The Kalibapi o Kapisanan ng Paglilingkod sa Bagong Pilipinas was also organized, designed to be the sole and executive political organization in the Philippines. The new constitution was approved by the Preparatory Committee on Philippine Independence on September 4, 1943 and ratified by the Kalibapi on September 7, 1943. The Kalibapi then proceeded to elect part of the new National Assembly, which also included appointed members. In turn, the National Assembly elected its Speaker and then elected Jose P. Laurel as President on October 14, 1943. In ceremonies in front of the Legislative Building in Manila. On September 21, 1944, President Laurel proclaimed martial law in the Philippines. It came into effect on September 22. On September 23, 1944, Laurel proclaimed that the Philippines was in a state of war with the Allied powers, but this was never ratified by National Assembly. In large part, Japanese disappointment with Laurel led to the Republic under Laurel being superseded by the Makapili, organized in December 1944, to more militantly oppose the returning American forces and Filipino guerrillas. The Japanese brought the Laurel government to Baguio in December 1944. And a small remnant of that government was taken to Tokyo in March 1945. Laurel formally dissolved the Second Republic on August 17, 1945, 2 days after Japan surrendered to the Allies.
So, this is the 1943 Japanese Constitution Preamble.
Next, I will tackle about 1973 Constitution or Marcos administration. In 1965, Ferdinand E. Marcos was elected president, and in 1967, Philippine Congress passed a resolution calling for a constitutional convention to change the 1935 Constitution. Before the convention finished its work, martial law was declared. Marcos cited a growing communist insurgency as a reason for the martial law, which was provided for in the 1935 Constitution. On November 29, 1972, the convention approved its proposed constitution. The constitution was supposed to introduce a parliamentary-style government where legislative power was vested in a unicameral National Assembly, with members being to a 6-year term.
So, this is the 1973 Marcos Administration Preamble.
Lastly, I will tackle about 1986 Freedom Constitution. The controversial 1986 Philippine presidential election is the culminating event that led to the People Power Revolution, which deposed Ferdinand Marcos as president and installed Corazon Aquino as the new president of the country. Marcos' administration was noted for its authoritarian rule, especially under the martial law era. The Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, National Democratic Front initiated talks for a ceasefire following Aquino's ascendancy to the presidency and praised the 1986 revolution for restoring civil liberties and freeing 500 political prisoners, but remained wary of United States imperialism and figures it considers as reactionaries within the Philippine military. A provisional government was proclaimed in March 1986 by Aquino with the adoption of an interim constitution informally called Freedom Constitution. By her administration, she did not officially proclaim a revolutionary government, which some of her aides advised as too inflammatory. Aquino also abolished the Batasang Pambansa, the national legislature previously dominated by Marcos' party, the Kilusang Bagong Lipunan, and claimed legislative powers for herself. The interim constitution replaced the 1973 constitution adopted during Marcos' administration. Aquino had vast personal powers under the provisional constitution. This includes the power to remove and replace local government officials during the transition period. Supporters of Aquino's measure backed near absolute powers given by the interim constitution or freedom constitution as necessary so that the dictatorial machinery of Marcos could be dismantled, while opponents argued that such power could also make Aquino's government a dictatorship. She projected that a regular government under a new constitution would be in place within a year. The Presidential Committee on Human Rights and the Presidential Commission on Good Government was established with the latter task to investigate cases of graft and corruption and recover ill-gotten assets by the Marcos administration and their affiliates for the government.
Hello everyone, so this is me again, Van Alumar Sinatwa. The 1987 Constitution, so it is after the martial law. President Corazon Aquino's government had three options regarding the Constitution. First, revert to the 1935 Constitution. Second, to retain the 1973 Constitution and be granted the power to make reforms, or the last one is to start anew and break from the vestiges of a disgraced dictatorship. So, they decided to make a new constitution that, according to the president herself, should be truly reflective of the aspiration and ideals of the Filipino people. So, in 1986, a constitutional convention was created. It composed of 48 members appointed by President Corazon Aquino from varied backgrounds and representation. Then, the Constitution begins with preamble and 18 self-contained articles. And also, it established the Philippines as a democratic republican state where sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. So, in this day now, we already became a democratic country. So maybe this is one of the reasons we back then. Then it allocates governmental powers among executives, legislative, and judicial branches of the government. So the executive branch are going to sign laws, vetoes laws, pardon people, appoints federal judges, and they are elected every 4 years. Then the legislative branch, it has divided into two houses, which are the Senate and the House of the Representative. Then they are the one who make laws, approves presidential appointments, and also the number of the congressmen is based on the population. Then the judicial branch are the one who decides if laws are constitutional, if it is acceptable, then they are the one who appointed by the president, and they can overturn rulings by other judges. The power of these three branches are separated from one another. This is what we call the separation of powers. It also has system of checks and balances, meaning to say that in this system, each branches has the power to check, to restrain or to stop the action by the other branches. This is to prevent from becoming too powerful. The 1987 Philippine Constitution. We, the sovereign Filipino people, imploring the aid of Almighty God in order to build a just and humane society and establish a government that shall embody our ideals and aspiration, promote the common good, conserve and develop a patrimony, and secure to ourselves and posterity the blessings of independence and democracy under the rule of law and a regime of truth, justice, freedom, love, equality, and peace do ordain and promulgate this Constitution.
that will be the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.